Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Beer and Code, where I will be talking to you guys about things that I learned while on the job and working on hobby projects and things like that. Today's episode is called How I Brought Down Our Website, and I'm just going to explain to you guys exactly how I recently took down my company's public website for an afternoon, or a morning actually, and talk to you about how it happened, why it happened, and some lessons that I learned from my mistake, and some lessons that you can hopefully learn from me the easy way. Alright, let's hop into the code, because that's why we're here. So, basically we're working with an ASP.NET MVC application, and I added some code to a controller that ended up just completely taking down the website. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a bit. But the code that I was going to add was essentially some functionality to be able to toggle on or off features in various environments, so that you could basically say, I want this feature to be on dev but not in test. Something along those lines. So that's what I was adding, and this feature wasn't actually even going to be used yet. I was just putting in some piping, some framework for later, but it ended up blowing things up anyway. Alright, so let's have a look at the code. So here is the fateful line of code inside of our controller base. So this controller base is the base controller for every single controller in our website. So this controller base is spun up with every request, and there's the fateful line of code that I added. Looks fairly innocuous, doesn't it? That's what I thought. All right. Let's look at the feature manager, and the feature manager. This is the class that I was newing up. This constructor here. Essentially, all it does is it creates a new SQL connection to be used later, and it opens it up so that we can use the connection whenever we like later on. And remember, it's actually not going to be used at all, so we won't even be reading from this connection just yet. So, when I added this code to the constructor, without it, CPU sits about zero. CPU utilization on the servers was running from about 0 to 5%. And we're actually in a really high traffic time of year right now with all of the New Year's resolutions. So, that's the line of code, CPU around 0 to 5%. With the line of code, it spiked up to 80 to 90 to 100%, which ended up just destroying our web servers. They just became unresponsive. They weren't servicing any requests, and our website was not available for the better part of a morning until we found the cause of the issue. Anyway, let me see here. Let me look at my script to make sure I'm on track here. Alright, now let's look at what was wrong. Alright, so in the controller here, protected feature manager feature equals new feature manager. So essentially, what this is doing, this is newing up a new feature manager. However, it was newing up a new one every time. Every time a request was made, it was newing up a new feature manager. That's probably not what we wanted, but it was doing that. So we have a look over here at the feature manager. What the heck was that constructor doing to cause so much trouble? Well, whoops. It turns out, with every single request, it was creating a new SQL connection. Now it seems pretty obvious that that's a bad idea. But not only was it creating a new SQL connection with every single request, but it was also opening that connection and just leaving it open. This connection, nowhere in this code, anywhere, is a call to close it. So it was just creating these connections and just keeping them open. And just our web servers could not handle that. So let's hop back over the controller. I'm sorry. Hopefully you can follow along with my jumping. We're just in two files. But back in the controller, let's start looking for some code smells that we could have seen while we were developing that may have helped us catch this before we even pushed it into, or before we even checked the code in. Right off the bat here, we see this line of code, and the fateful line of code. Why the heck did I think that I needed a feature manager for every single request? Why did I need a new one for every single request? So it turns out I actually didn't realize, I wasn't thinking that this would be newed up thousands and thousands of times. I just kind of spaced that fact of the framework. So that's the first code smell. Another code smell is in this constructor. Constructors should not do any work. They should not be used. They should not open connections or do anything like that. Constructors should be very, very minimal. Take in the required state or variables, save them, and then use them later when they are required. So the fact that I was opening up a new connection in the constructor was bad enough. But then I added insult to injury by just opening up and leaving it open. That's very, very silly. So don't do work in your controllers. That was another code smell. So those were the code smells, and let's just look at what a fix might have been, or some things that we could have done to alleviate that. So first of all, making this static, this feature manager static, so that it was only newed up once when the controller base was initiated the first time. That would have saved us a whole lot of headache and probably stopped this whole thing from happening in the first place. I don't need multiple instances of this feature manager. I only need one. It doesn't really have any state that it stores that I would be using in any way. So one instance of the feature manager is enough. That was silly. Let's look back at the feature manager code. So in the feature manager code, obviously I need to get rid of this junk that I'm doing in the constructor. So I have the current version here, which is just a little bit different. So as you can see, here's the new constructor, and it calls this set language and culture method, which just grabs the variables and then uses up something else that is inconsequential. It doesn't do any work, doesn't open up any connections. It's much better. It does no work this time, and it just zips along, and you're done. Doing this here, making only this change would also have probably solved our problem. Now I actually need to use a connection somewhere. So you can see here, this is where we're actually making a database call. Con.query. So we're using Dapper here to make our database calls. What I did simply was create a little helper method called withNewConnection. And here I'm using a using statement, which is great because it will handle disposing your connection when you're done with it. I'm just newing up a new connection, opening it up, and then running the code that's passed in. So here I'm just passing in code that uses that connection, and then when that code is done executing, the using statement cleans all that junk up, so we don't have any more open connections. So that is how I went about solving that problem. So now I only open up a connection when I absolutely need it, and close it when I'm done with it, almost as importantly. So those are the fixes for the code. So let's talk about just some general lessons that I learned here. So basically, the first one is know your framework. I should have been thinking about it, that whenever a new request is made, this base controller, the base controller for all of the controllers in our site, a new one is spun up every time. So I should have realized that this line of code was going to be called thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Every time someone requested a new page, or actually even a new JSON request came down, it still spins up a new controller, and that constructor would have been called. So that was the first lesson that I learned, is just know your framework, guys. That was my mistake. The next lesson learned, let's make sure I'm not forgetting. Conserve your resources. So over here in the old version of Feature Manager, where I'm creating a new connection and then opening it up, that's terrible. Conserve your resources. Only open connections when you need them, and clean them up when you're done with them. So that is yes, another lesson. Clean up your connections. Be vigilant about conserving your resources. And lastly, a lesson that I learned was that if you have your QA team do load testing, even if you do make programming mistakes like this, they will be caught before you push them to production. So our QA team consists currently of one person, and he has like I think 8 developers that he QAs for. So he doesn't have time for this. So it's definitely not his fault that he doesn't do load testing. But if we would have that, it would be awesome because we would have caught this. I would have been shameful, but I would not have blown up our public website in that way. So load testing would have been super helpful there. So all in all, I just wanted to share this experience with you that I had. I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, and hopefully you can learn some lessons the easy way by watching my videos. So if you like this and hope to see more things like that and like this, click subscribe, click like, and based on that I'll see what kind of frequency of content I can put up. I hope to do at least monthly. Weekly would be an amazing goal. So yes, thanks again for watching. Please click subscribe and like if you enjoyed this, and I need a tagline, like a sign-off thing, but I don't have one right now, so just thanks for watching. Hey guys, I forgot to mention that I would appreciate it if you would share with me in the comments below sometimes that, or a time that you have made a very teeny little mistake and it caused a big problem like that. I'd be interested to hear you guys' experience. So hopefully I can figure out how to run my video editing software and stick this at the end of the video. So cheers, and thanks for watching again.